Hey, so a quick tour of how you could use this audit so you can get your answers fast and move work forward. So before I jump in, quick shout out to two places you can check me out. Obviously, you can check me out at my consulting website, chrismorency.com specifically slash CTO, where I provide fractional services for micro SaaSes who are looking to get to the next level. I do have packages on there pretty much starting at $2,000. In addition to that, I lead the microsas platform factory, where again we build microsas, right? Not only from a engineering standpoint, but from a product and go-to-marketing standpoint as well. Okay, no, moving on from this mandatory and shameless plug, let's jump into the audit. All right, so first off, you'll check out that there is a executive summary right off the bat, just kind of like a high level of your code repository. In this case, we had two code repositories, a front end and a back end. You will then jump down to your founder focus. Look, there's a lot of information here. Did a really deep dive into your code bases. Some things that you'd want to know, some things that you need to know, and definitely some things that should definitely be founder focus. So you have a founder focus section where you have a front end executive summary, back end executive summary. Very importantly, scorecards, and I'll touch into that a little bit. Code-based issues summarized, a 90-day remediation plan. Okay, so how we're gonna fix it over the next 90 days, preparing you to go to launch. And this I really love for you is application and flows. I believe it's very important, super important for a non-technical founder who's especially built their platform with an outsourced team without a lot of documentation to understand high level the workflow and how their platform works. I put that together here for you. If you drop down here, you'll see in the executive summary section, there's an overall health with some traffic lights. And you'll see some grids, right? So I can see, for example, FE means front end, BE means back end. You're getting a 2.2/5 on architecture, a 3/5 on back end architecture. There's some moderate risk. So there's FE UI sprawl. So front end UI sprawl, back end has single points of failures, stuff like that. So this is really high level here in the executive summary space. And then again, following the same sort of like idea here, you have a high level of your key risk and deep dives. So you can see we have some critical issues, which is security at the edges, at the seams. There's some alarming ones. Like, for example, you're missing Stripe webhook signature verification. And this one is very alarming. You have hard-coded secrets in the back end. We need to rotate and move to environments, variables, or secret manager in AWS, stuff like that. We have critical stuff here. We have high risk here. And then, again, we have high risk here. Now we have a few things that we need to get you to a green state, which is a good state, kind of like just summarizing to must do and should do. Later on, in different pages, I'll show you where we go into much more detail, but you can think of this page as your executive summary, right? With an embedded founder focus, right? So the next one that we want to look at here is just kind of jump in, just kind of like a high level to the areas that are not in the founder focus. I'll come back and I'll go deeper into the founder focus, right? Quick shout out on the left hand side. You'll see that you have links here that you can use to navigate you through, kind of like the homepage, if you will. Then we're just going to jump in here again, another shameless plug into my socials. You can be sure to check me out on LinkedIn. Be sure to follow me on Twitter/X and the same as YouTube. All right, that'll be much appreciated. Okay, now getting back to work. You'll see that we have deep dive information here into the technical audit, right? So deep dive into the front end technical audit. We see architecture, code quality, testing, CI/CD pipeline stuff. And a few things that you might want to check out. Again, this deep dive is maybe not meant for you, more meant for me, I believe, as we move forward. Or if you bring on another technical resource, this entire document will be great to pass on to them. So we have a deep dive for the both, front end and back end. Um, we have a system map in here, which is just kind of like some very high level images and explanations on the interaction and flow between the different, sort of like components in your system. Very high level. We're using some AWS architecture here, along with some of the third-party resources like Stripe. Observability, it's a fancy way of saying how do we monitor how the platform is doing. And then obviously we have our front end or authentication service or back end. So how this all come together, that's documented, and a little bit of call out to the notable gaps like security, payments, and observability problems. Again, these are not part of the founder focus, but they're here for if you're very curious to dig in even deeper, right? Again, what I've done, the founder focus is the stuff which I know that you want to look at, you want to know inside out. The additional things, if you're curious, you want to jump in and learn them more, and so forth and so on. Another thing we have here is the API surface and database schema. Again, that shows you how your API is set up and how it's being used by the front end. So again, well documented here. Again, you'll see a little on each page. I usually do like a quick notes and a to-do, right? Because these all bubble up into issues and roadmap. Now, the dependency SBOM is the dependency software bill of materials, right? It's a very fancy way of saying what are the things that your application depends on, right? And anytime you have dependencies that represent risk, so you want to analyze that. So you'll see I have some top risk here for the back end, just kind of listed out, and I have top risk here for the front end that I have actually identified. And in this part here, the application diagrams and flows, they will be part of the founder focus. So I'm not going to jump into this because I'm going to jump into founder focus from top to bottom right now. So again, founder focus are the things that I really want you to focus in and get really comfortable with. The first one is the front end executive summary. If I click on that, that will take us to that. And you'll see that in the executive summary, we talk about key findings and the business impact. You will see that there are severity levels assigned to each one from P0, meaning low, to P2, which is high. And then obviously you see some top recommendations for the 90-day schedule. If we jump down to the back end summary, you'll see the same thing being used as well. You'll see some key findings, along with some critical security vulnerabilities. Again, really serious. And again, you'll see the recommendations kind of like listed on here for the 90-day plan. Again, just to clarify, P0 means super important. Let me clarify. I think I made a mistake a little bit when I explained that a few seconds ago. Then we start getting into things where we summarize information, right? So these three links, well, actually these four are summarized information, especially the Swiss free. So you want to spend some time on those. The first one would be the scorecard. The scorecard is very summarized, right? We look at your back end, look at the front end, and break it down into categories, and then I rank it from 0 to 5. Right? 5 being really good, 0 being really bad. Right? So you can see, for example, the current code is struggles with documentation. There's virtually none. And some of the README files are like empty. Developer experience is bad, right? So what that means is that if someone is taking over your code, they pretty much have to set up a lot of documentation and stuff like that from the get-go and tooling, and that's really bad. Performance is mid, right? Dependencies are duplicated. Observability is pretty non-existent, right? And observability is things like login and audit trails to see what your platform is doing. Data is good. They've done a good job on the data. Security is bad, right? I found multiple critical security vulnerabilities, multiple, right? So that's really bad. CI/CD talks to the ability to push up new code. That's not too good as well. There's not a lot of TypeScript strictness, and there's incomplete DTO validations. So that's really bad code quality. Infrastructure is mid. Again, documentation is really bad on the front end. There's none. What else? Dependencies. There's a lot of UI library sprawl, right? Meaning that we're using a lot of things that are crossing over. Observability is nil, right? There's no login or anything like that in here. Security again is bad. Missing security headers, vulnerable dependencies, improper secret managements. We have things hard coded in there. So that's bad. And we literally have no framework for pushing up code, right? But the code quality is pretty good. It's a little bit past mid, and the architecture itself is mid. There's no centralized data fetching layer and all that kind of stuff. So that's just really, it's mid code, right? I would say below mid, if I'm being completely honest. All right. And the next thing we want to look at here is your code-based issues. And you can see they're all summarized here, quite a few of them. And what's important is to understand that there's certain categories like payments, documentation, performance, API. There's a title, there's a detail that kind of explains what the issue is. Phase kind of lets us know in what order we'll tackle these, like now, right, and later. Effort is small, medium, large, right? Gives us the idea of how much work it's going to take. The risk score is, man, what sort of risk this presents to us, right? As you can see, things like we have hard-coded secrets, right? I mean, that's a 16, that's high, right? So you can see usually stuff that labels security is going to be high, right? Stuff that's labeled architecture is high. Stuff that's labeled dependencies or testing is high, right? I think the evidence column is pretty much for me. I have supporting files that I use to do this. So it points back between the evidence and the files. It points back to files and data that I have. So you don't have to really worry about this too much. And then we have priority, obviously, stuff that is P0 is higher priority than P5. The repo points to where the problem was found. So B for backend, FE for front end. Severity, that's self-explanatory. And then suggested fix is just a quick summary of the fix that I would put in to actually address those issues. Then we follow up. Let's go to the remediation plan last. So let's just follow up with application and workflows. That will actually just point you to a section here, since there are multiple. And we have a few flows and things that we would like to understand, right? When I say we throughout this call, when I say we throughout this recording, I always refer to us as a team, right? As we build out, this platform. So one would be, I would really like you to just kind of understand how authentication works, right? In your platform. So there's a diagram, that's custom created, as well as a summary to help you understand. So I'm trying to take something that's super technical that you might not be familiar with and just kind of let you understand that this is actually how your platform works, right? Which makes a lot of sense if once you get into selling, right? Because you'll get questions like, hey, how do you authenticate? How do you keep us, how is this thing secured? So you'll have that information at your fingertips, maybe even be able to use these direct images in your presentations, right? So let's look at the next one, CI/CD. So this might not concern you too much, but this is going to let you know how code changes could be made right now in the platform once it's ready to go. Right now, it's not really doing that. As I mentioned earlier on, that is actually a point of issue. Observability pipeline. This is what it should look like when we're done. Right? So there's a little bit of hints of that in here, but as you can see from early on, it's ranked really low. This I really liked. I really like the approach that they use here for file uploads. It's what I would have done. And S3 pre-signed. Let me explain what that is. So AWS has a service that you can use to upload files. A pre-signed URL is a URL where you have to get, let me put it simply, you have to get approved, by your code to be able to push up a file, which is super secure, which is what I do in every situation. So they're called pre-signed URLs because they have to be sort of like encrypted, for the lack of a better term. So what I did was I did a diagram here that explains how the file upload process works in your platform right now. It's one of the things that a few things that I like. Okay, I should take that back. I'm sounding a little harsh. Um, the platform is good, right? It's mid code, but it's done okay, right? It's not something where I would just kind of like, oh my gosh, this guy's all right. So I just want to make sure I say this, right? Whenever you're doing these audits, we have to be strict, right? But I've seen worse, right? I've seen much worse, right? So it's nothing like, you got taken or anything like that. This is a good enough job. I just want to make sure I said that, right? What you have is a good enough job, but obviously we're seeing security holes, we're seeing security issues, which I get in most times I do audits, right? So that's just what that's what I do. That's what happens, especially when you're coding, in the, you're coding outsourced, right? These things happen. So I don't want to plant a seed in your head, that your platform is not good, right? It is, right? Just want to make that very clear. It's just that it's not, you came to me for a reason, right? And these are the things I'm exposing. So I just want to make sure I'm not being too harsh. Like these things have to be done, but it's not anything that you throw up your hand in the head and your hand in the air and go like, oh, I wasted my money. It's nothing like that, right? You should feel very proud of what you've developed here so far. All right. So the next one to go on to is kind of like, I want to show you how your Stripe payments work in the system. So you understand that. So when people ask you, you can explain. And then this is kind of very high level as to the different sort of like data that you're storing, right? Again, that's just so you can understand. You can maybe even use these in, go to market, sort of like, assets that you create, but just give you a really good understanding of what you have data wise. And then let's just kind of close out this recording with the 90-day remediation plan. Yeah, I kind of set up a 90-day remediation plan going phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. As you can see, I break it down by little task that we have to do so we can actually clean everything up and we can address the issues that have been identified on the issues page and throughout this audit. All right. So hopefully, this video helps you to kind of walk through, this Notion page, that I put together. I'm going to take this video. Obviously, it's going to be uploaded here into my YouTube and listed as private. As you can also see, there's nothing from your code exposed, right? So everything should be safe. I look forward to speaking to you tomorrow, or the day after and taking the next steps.